Hello, everyone, and today I wanted to go ahead and start getting into the writing assignment, which will be due, your first writing assignment, the 4 sentence essay, which will be due on July 7th. It will be due on July 7th, and it will serve as the foundation for all of the writing that you'll do, writing assignments that you'll do for the rest of the class. So, I'm going to go ahead and publish this now. As you can see here, right underneath syllabus and course materials and writing assignments, you have a writing assignments tab. Okay. Here you've got a handout, which we'll go into. Here you've got examples, and here you have the assignment itself. Okay. So your first assignment is the 4 sentence essay. And we'll look at what that means a little bit more, but for now I'm just going to go through this. So the 4 sentence essay is the first of 3 writing assignments for the class. I want you to think of it like a pitch. Okay, you're trying to get approval from me and our grader Kate on this writing idea that you have. Okay, you need to figure out what your idea is going to be, and then you need to you need to get the idea to paper, okay? But it's short. It's only 4 sentences long. I mean that literally. 4 sentences long, nothing more. Okay? The only works cited you're going to need to do is to provide me the source that you got your case from, okay? Very short essay. Shouldn't take very long. After this, you'll do a 1-page outline of the paper, and then after that, you'll do the full 1,000 to 1,250 word paper. Now, for the sake of this paper, you can choose your own topic, whatever you want it to be. The only condition is that you have to utilize at least one real-world case in your paper. You can either choose to critique the practice of some real-world business, government, or other actor as they pertain to business, or you can use the case as a means of weighing in on some debate covered in the class, like in the textbook. We'll discuss this a little bit more in a moment. Your goal in this essay is to put forward a carefully thought out philosophical argument. I'm looking for 2 things. 1, were you able to show that you are capable of engaging charitably with views that you disagree with? And 2, were you able to show that you can think philosophically about ethics while taking care to be objective, meaning you don't let your biases in, critical, meaning you're critical of both your opponent's position and your own position, and engaged, meaning you're showing us that you're capable of and responsive to the different kinds of considerations which might be involved in trying to figure out an issue. Okay? So it's very simple. All right, we're just looking for these things. It shouldn't be a hard assignment, but we are going to give you a lot of feedback on it, hopefully. All right. Now, your 4 sentence essay is going to serve, like I said, as the building block for the future writing assignments in the class. But since the class is abbreviated, since we only have 8 weeks, this means that you'll only have 3 or 4, 2 or 3 classes since the beginning of the summer term that we're in to inform what you're going to write on. That means basically that we've done 2 introduction weeks, and now we're finally getting into the actual meat of the class. So what you need to do, so you might find it hard to pick a case, is what I'm saying. Because the class is shorter, you might find it more difficult to figure out what you want your subject to be, what your case should be, because you don't have the whole semester to figure it out. What I'm going to talk about right now, and what you can find out if you in more detail if you read this handout, is how you pick your topic and how you pick your cases. Okay, so let's start with the second issue. So I say there are 2 broad ways that you can figure out how to integrate a case into your essay. There are 2 ways you might do that, right? The first is what we might call the instrumental approach. These are both legitimate, by the way, right? You could use either one. The instrumental approach, when you use the instrumental approach, you choose a case which you think is helpful in elucidating some facet of the debates that we're considering in class. For example, I think that the recent Boeing scandals show X, Y, and Z about the debate over the nature of corporate social responsibility. Does this make sense? So you're saying, all right, what we have here as Boeing, or with Boeing, is this case of Boeing doing all of these unethical things. Here's what this tells us about this subject that's covered directly or covered in the course materials in the textbook. Right? If you're talking about corporate social responsibility, you might say, this shows us that we should have the economic model or the minimal moral content model or whatever about corporate social responsibility. Then, secondly, you can take what we call the direct approach. With the direct approach, you choose a case, and that case serves as the immediate subject of your essay. The ethical status of a business in question is the point of incorporating a case. That is to say, you pick the case to talk about the ethical status of the business. So, for example, your subject can be, or your thesis can be, I think that Hooker Chemical is morally responsible for the damages to the community at Love Canal, even if they did not sign a contract, even if they did sign a contract to eschew legal responsibility. All right? So there we can talk about what our 4-sentence essay would look like with the Hooker Chemical case here in a minute. Or it could be, I think that Walmart acted unethically by shutting down the internal investigations into corrupt actions in Mexico, for example. So in either case, however you use it, whether you're using the case as an instrument to elucidate a debate or you're treating the case as the subject of your essay, you'll need to pick a case and use it for your essay. There's a few repositories you might choose from to select your case. For example, you've already started to build one. The first week's discussion posts included every single one of your peers and yourself submitting a case of a business acting unethically or acting potentially unethically. Those cases might serve as the basis for your case. Okay? Now, sometimes your paper's not going to be, I think that Boeing acted unethically, or I think that Walmart acted unethically. You're going to need a little bit more meat on the bones than that. You're going to need to say, Facebook is acting unethically when they do this. They need to do this instead, right? They need to have this other model or something like that. But we'll talk about that more when we get to comments on your 4-sentence essay. For now, we're just looking for you to select what the ethical issues might be and think about what someone who disagrees with you might say, a reasonable person who disagrees with you might say. So you can look at the discussion forum, right? But if the forum's not enough, if you don't like any of those cases, every chapter of the textbook starts with a case, so you can use those cases. Or you can use the ethics bull packet that I'll post in the assignments module. That hasn't been posted yet, but it will be. The only conditions on which cases you're allowed to use is that the case must focus on the activities of a business or set of businesses, not on individual actors or public entities, where public entities means governments, government agencies, etc., except insofar as those non-business entities relate to the business practices, i.e., consumer boycotts or industry regulations. Well, what does that mean? It means that your case needs to be about two things. Your paper needs to be about two things, and the case needs to be related to those things. One, ethics, questions about what's right and wrong, what's permissible, how we ought to restrict each other's behavior, what we ought to do about something, like someone acting badly. And two, your cases should be about business and relate to business. Ethics and business. It's a business ethics class, as it turns out, right? So we don't want you to focus on individual actors or public entities, except insofar as those entities and public actors might be relevant. So, for example, if you found a case about brand endorsements from celebrities, or if you found a case about boycotts or the government regulating an industry, you could present on that as long as you're talking about ethical issues, and you explain what businesses it will impact and how it relates to thinking about business more broadly. So how should you write the 4-sentence essay? Well, we're going to get to another document which will show you more about this soon, but basically, your essay is meant to take the shape of a simulated dialogue. We're asking you to be charitable, that is, to represent a view you disagree with in a charitable way, okay? What does it mean to be charitable? What it means to be charitable is to present a view that you disagree with, or views of other people, even if you do agree with them, in the best light possible. I don't want you to present a deeply implausible view and then tear that down. I want you to present a plausible view and criticize that, right? If you're unable to come up with a case where you think someone could reasonably disagree with you, then either you need to take a different angle on that case and think about a more fundamental part of the case, or you need to pick a different case. Because we're not looking for you to just show that there are some unreasonable people and show that you can easily put them down. We're looking for you to show that you can compete in the arena of, ideas. For you, that you can show us that you're able to deliver critique, receive critique, and respond to critique, right? From otherwise intelligent people, from people who you respect intellectually, right? So the idea of the essay is to simulate a dialogue, okay? The structure of the assignment is thus designed to facilitate the ideal of that dialogue. Imagine you're writing a short summary of a debate that you might have with a friend who disagrees with you, but who you nonetheless respect intellectually. So let's look at the handout about this to see what this looks like in a little bit more detail with a little bit less abstract shit. With a little bit less abstraction. So here underneath the handout we have the 4-sentence essay example, right? So here's how the structure of this essay should be. And I mean, all of your 4-sentence essay should have this structure, okay? We have delineated the structure very clearly for you. It goes, they say blank. I say blank because blank. One might object that blank. I reply that blank. Okay? So long as your 4-sentence essay has 4 sentences formatted as 1 through 4, you will have successfully written a 4-sentence essay. Here's an example. They say we shouldn't be free to smoke on campus since smoking is bad for you. I say that we should be free to smoke because even though smoking is bad, it's worse to restrict our freedom. One might object that restricting our freedom is necessary in the name of public health. I reply that freedom carries more weight than public health, for with no freedom, public health would be meaningless. Okay, we're going to talk about this example in a second. But notice that it matches the structure. They say blank. I say blank because blank, right? Okay, let's think about it again. Earlier I used the example of Hooker Chemical, right? My thesis might be this. I think that Hooker Chemical is morally responsible for the harm, at least partly morally responsible for the harms that befell the community of Love Canal and Niagara Falls, even though they attempted to eschew responsibility legally. All right, so how might we do this? Well, someone might think that as long as a business is playing within the rules of the law, then they're free to do as they please, morally speaking. In fact, some people do think that, as you'll see in the week on corporate social responsibility, week 3, which should be released soon, right? So I might say, they say that Hooker Chemical is not morally responsible for the harms that befell the citizens of Love Canal because they were legally exempt from, they took steps to be legally exempt from being harmful. I say Hooker Chemical is morally responsible for the harms that befell the community of Love Canal because the Hooker Chemical made a deal that flouted informed consent, that did not tell everyone the possible consequences of chemicals under the ground. One might object that this is a bad standard, because if legal responsibility is not enough, then companies might be morally responsible for all kinds of unforeseen circumstances. I reply that companies are responsible for unforeseen circumstances so long as it's something that was preventable and that the company should have known better with regard to. In the case of Hooker Chemical, this I could say would happen. All right. So that's a really unelegant example. I'm doing it off the top of my head. You'll want to spend a little bit more time curating it. It needs to be 4 sentences only, for example. But that's basically how it would work. You have a thesis in mind. The they say part of the essay is supposed to show that you're supposed to start with someone who disagrees with you. Your part is an objection to them. 3 is their objection to your objection. And 4 is your reply. Okay? So 1, you're basically stating the context. 2, you're stating your thesis. 3, you're stating what your opponents might reply. And 4, you're replying to that reply. Now let's return to the example. They say we shouldn't be free to smoke on campus, and smoking is bad for you. I say that we should be free to smoke, because even though smoking is bad, it's worse to restrict our freedom. One might object that restricting our freedom is necessary in the name of public health. I reply that freedom carries more weight than public health, for with no freedom, public health would be meaningless. All right, so let's evaluate this together. First, let's look at what's good about it. So, this 4-sentence essay does have the right structure. This essay does a good job of making 1 through 4 relate to each other. It feels like a conversation between people with different ideas. That's what we're going for. But what's bad about it? Well, the phrase public health would be meaningless in 4 is vague. I'm not sure what it would mean for public health to be meaningful. What does that mean exactly? Thus, ironically, to say it's meaningless doesn't mean much. It doesn't add to what was said in 2. And so it isn't a helpful reply to 3. The ugly. The problem I pointed to with 4 likely stems from the fact that 3 is a very good objection to 2. This leads the author to say something vague, 3, since 3 isn't compelling anyway. Let me explain. 2 suggests one of 2 values is more important. 3 suggests that 2 values come into conflict. The claim that 2 values come into conflict doesn't contradict the claim that one of the 2 values is more important. It thus looks like the author of this 4-sentence essay has made their life too easy. They've offered a mediocre objection to their own view. No greater sin. I want you to raise the best objection to your view that you can think of. I then want you to respond to that objection. Okay? The comments that you receive will be similar to this. Some of them will try to point out what you've done well. Some of them will point out some things that you need to do a little bit better about. And some of them will go into a little bit more detail about something you need to fix. In each case, you'll need to look at what our comments say and then use that to make your ultimate outline better. Part of how we're going to grade parts 2 and 3 of your writing assignment for this class is how well you respond to the feedback we give you at the 4-sentence essay and the outline of the essay parts of the class. Okay? How do you then meaningfully respond to our feedback? Well, let's look at the bad here. The phrase public health would be meaningless is vague. Okay, so what can you do? You can make it more precise. You can take this phrase and change it to express something clearer or more exacting or more direct. Whatever would need to be the case to make communicating this idea much clearer to your audience. Similarly, down here, we're asking you to change something. In the ugly portion, we're asking you to change something a little bit more robust. We're asking you to take the essay that take the position you've written and change it. We're saying basically, look, your objection just, or your response to the objection just isn't that good, or the way you state your thesis just isn't very strong, or you're misunderstanding the logic of the objection of your opponents ideally understood. So you're going to have to do a little bit more work to show us that you understand the objection, or that you can present a better objection, or that you can present a better version of your thesis originally to begin with. Oops, ignore. Once you've got your 4-sentence essay written, you can submit it here in Canvas. This is what it'll look like to you. Currently, it's locked until June 29th. It'll be due on July 7th. The essay is worth 100 points, as it's worth 10% of your grade. All right. Thank you very much, and I will talk to you soon. Please reach out if you have any questions.